Welcome to Thorpe Park. They call it the island like no other. Yes, it's definitely a theme park, but these days it's mainly a thrill seeker's paradise. And this is the story of how it came to be, and a closer look at some of the rides that once upon a time would have been creations of a madman's dreams. Less than 60 miles from central London, Thorpe Park was once referred to as Alton Tower's angry teenage little brother. I think roller coaster enthusiasts especially can probably relate to that.
What are your first memories of coming to Thorpe Park?
Stealth opening weekend.
For me was October 2005. I came here on a day trip on the train from Crewe with Coastertouring. It was on their Coastertouring meet-up, and there was 83 people, and I think my first ride here was Rush, and I had to be the person who told the staff member there's 83 of us, and I remember them just being like, what do you mean 83? I'm like, it's alright, we'll split up. So yeah, that's my first memory. But I remember seeing Stealth built but not open, and riding Inferno in the dark, and it was just incredible. I've always loved Thorpe since. It's a great park.
So, where to begin? Originally, the grounds of what is now the Thorpe Park Resort was an estate. Thorpe Place is the original manor house and was the home of the Lee Bennett family. They sold the land to gravel companies and the house to a convent, thereby splitting up an estate which had been in the family for some 400 years. This all happened in the 1930s, and for the next 40 years the site was predominantly gravel pits. Much sand and gravel was after all needed to help rebuild Great Britain following the horrors of the Second World War.
The government's final warning to Hitler has been ignored, and a state of war once more exists between Great Britain and Germany. Only 25 minutes after war has been declared comes the first air raid warning.
Eventually, these gravel pits were flooded in the late 1970s to create what we now call the island like no other. Part of the original estate was Manor Farm with its separate farmhouse. The Georgian style front was added to the back of the house and dates from the mid-1600s. At one time, the farmhouse was part of Thorpe Park. It might amuse roller coaster enthusiasts to know that the Bennett family sold the site to RMC. No, not the Rocky Mountain Construction Company, but Ready Mixed Concrete Limited. After extracting gravel and sand, the company kept the land and decided to turn it into one of the UK's premier leisure facilities. Once the site was flooded, it was even used to host the World Water Skiing Championships.
But it's Liz Allen Shetter, the USA, who carries off the gold medal with a superb performance.
In 1979, Lord Louis Mountbatten opened Thorpe Park. Initially, it was a water and leisure exhibition park, a collection of minor but fairly quirky attractions. And if you've ever been to Thorpe Park Resort, I'm sure you instantly recognise that dome. Thorpe Park became an instant hit, winning a prestigious leisure tourism award in its first year. The park was initially home to aircraft displays, a model village and even a bouncy castle, something Thorpe Park paid homage to with their 40th anniversary celebrations.
Oh my leg! Oh, Jesus Christ!
Throughout the 80s and 90s, it slowly became a theme park.
My first memories of the Thorpe Park Resort were back in 2016 when I went for my second South Parks event, and we had a behind the scenes tour of Nemesis Inferno, half an hour ERT on Nemesis Inferno, and it was a good day. Met up with loads of great people that day.
Okay, so your first memories of Thorpe Park?
My first memories of Thorpe Park aren't actually that long ago. Growing up in the northwest, Thorpe was always a very long way and not somewhere that you just pop down to. So I tended to end up actually going to Alton Towers a lot more than anywhere else. And didn't really get to Thorpe Park until really quite recently. So I think first real memories of Thorpe Park are coming here with Tina and Peter, with my family now.
Long before Rob Jackson's first visit, in fact, he was 2 years old when Thorpe Park opened Cinema 180 in 1981. It was a UK cinema and a theme park first. It was an immersive experience where guests would watch a 12-minute film of action clips while standing in front of a 180-degree screen, something of a precursor to the 3D cinema that we have today. In 1982, Thorpe Farm became part of the site and remained until 2006. It was accessible via a track, the water buses and the Canada Creek Railway. Nowadays, although not used by the resort, it remains an area that could still one day be utilised. And in 1983, the first roller coaster at Thorpe Park opened to a space theme. Space Station Zero started out as an indoor coaster, was moved outside, rethemed, and then eventually relocated again. It's a ride we now know as the Flying Fish, and it still exists today. It's had several incarnations with new restraints, and the original building the ride was located in is now used to host the arcade and the Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Get those family super savers, just £28 for 4.
For me, Thorpe Park is a special place to come, and it has been for many years now. The first time I came to Thorpe Park was in 2009, and I remember it because I just finished drama school at the time, and it was literally, we finished on the Friday and me and my friend came to Thorpe Park on the Saturday, and it was experiencing it for the first time, but also the excitement of finishing drama school and embarking on my new career as an actor. So yeah, that was my first experience of Thorpe Park.
1984 saw the opening of the very creepy looking Phantom Fantasia.
Thorpe Park Resort. Wow. Well, I had a friend, well, it was actually my mum and dad's friend, they live just around there, I think it was West Drayton, and they took me there for the first time, introduced me to Coaster Force as well. Nice. So like, I got into coasters because of them.
In 1986, a spinning teacup ride opened. Despite undergoing some changes and rethemes, this ride has remained a constant at the park until this very day. In fact, the original owners were investing heavily back in the mid-80s with the addition of Thunder River, a rapids ride, which was put in 1987. It still exists today and is called the Rumba Rapids. In 1988, the Palladium Theatre opened, and it still exists today in Angry Birds Land as a 4D cinema. A year later saw the opening of the Rocky Express and Loggers Leap, a log flume which sadly has now closed forever.
Why did you come? You can't stay forever. How could you leave me all alone on this earth? Who was I before you? I can't remember. Why couldn't I have been the one?
First opened in 1989, the ride was much loved by the public, and enthusiasts of the park have campaigned for a long time to have it restored to its former glory.
Cross the bridge into the fantastical world of Thorpe Park. It's absolutely fabulous, fantastical and thrill. Marvellous, magical, you're in for such a thrill. Loggers Leap, Death Charge, Carousel, Train! I Dance Show's Spectacular! He's got to be insane! So much more for you to do. You'll have to come back to the one and only, even greater, more fantastic, Great Thorpe Park! Yes!
She said, I love you, but goodbye. I love you, but goodbye. A bird with clipped wings can still sing, no longer fly.
It's been languishing and not operating since 2016. It was one of many rides that Thorpe Park have given us over the years that are now, sadly, no longer with us.
There must come an end. I want to thank you, darling, for all that you've given. I want to thank you for being my friend. She said, I love you, but goodbye. I love you, but goodbye. And I love you, but goodbye. Bird with clipped wings can still sing, but can no longer fly.
Wow, look, it's Thorpe Park. That is absolutely I've realised I'm wearing, and this is the wrong thing to wear. Anyway, so, Thorpe Park, how is it? This is Thorpe Park. Crop me out so it looks like Thorpe Park. There we go, that's better. Thorpe Park, what do I think of it? Well, it's a great park. I don't see any... A lot of people tend to slate it for not getting a new coaster like an RMC back there. I like it as it is. Stealth's my favourite ride there. Flying Fish is a debatable one, along with Bountzilla, but I'll take Stealth over any of them any day. Not even joking, this is genuine. The ride or attraction I miss the most has to be Bountzilla. Like, look at all the fun we're having back there. And it's just how chill the park is as a whole. You can just go there, chill out, have a good time, ride some rides, do whatever you want, and it's perfectly fine. It's just such a nice park to go to. Fright Nights over the years as well. That's been brilliant. Forgot about that. A Big Top in 2017. That was my first ever one. That was really good. And like certain scare mazes like Sanctum, that was awful. I do like the place a lot, and every single time I go back there, no matter if they don't get an RMC or not, I'm still having a good time, and that's why I like it.
The original railway was called the Treasure Island Railway. Some younger riders would even be given the black spot, which they could exchange for a free drink. The railway was eventually rethemed to the Canada Creek Railway. Something that Thorpe Park used deliciously with Platform 15, one of the many scare attractions over the years for the now annual Fright Nights event. By 1990, Space Station Zero had been completely relocated and had met its destiny, becoming the Flying Fish. In 1991, Depth Charged opened, and the potential of having a beach area of the park was truly beginning to be realised. Thorpe was becoming much more than just the sum of its parts. It would be a further 7 years before the Tussauds Group would get their hands on Thorpe Park. During this time, many more rides were added and removed from the island like no other. should also mention Ranger County and the Thorpe Park Rangers, park mascots from 1989 to 2005. But of course it was in the mid-90s where they were really at the height of their fame. Around this time, some of the original attractions were slowly being removed, and others, such as Phantom Fantasia, were being rethemed. The truth is, by 1996, Thorpe Park were very much playing catch-up. The big one had opened at Blackpool Pleasure Beach 2 years earlier, as had Nemesis at the Alton Towers Resort. So Thorpe Park fought back in 1996 when X No Way Out opened. It was the world's first backwards indoor roller coaster. Manufactured by Vekoma, it was arguably the first major roller coaster at Thorpe Park.
To launch this ride?
We decided to launch this ride as a way of attracting more visitors to the park and keeping up to date with our attractions in the theme park business.
Wouldn't it have just been easier to have launched the longest or the tallest ride?
That would have been the easy way of attracting people. Going for the longest, the tallest, the fastest is most parks' answer to putting in a new attraction. What we wanted to do was put a unique attraction into Thorpe Park.
So do you think this will actually attract extra business?
Oh, without a doubt, yes. We know from people's reactions already that they're going to come back and visit Thorpe Park because of this ride.
What sort of publicity is the ride going to have?
The ride is the biggest ever ride to be launched at Thorpe Park and will be the biggest ride to be launched in the UK this year. So as you'd expect, it's going to have a very big bang launch. You will see it across television in the southeast, throughout newspapers, you name it, we'll be there.
Are the pre-ride experiences totally unique?
Here we are in one of the Q-Ride experiences, and I best describe them as Crystal Maze meets Krypton Factor. They are unusual, they're different, they're exciting, and it's something that doesn't happen anywhere else in any other theme park.
Everybody's intrigued. Why have you called the ride X:/No Way Out?
Well, it's a very different ride, and we wanted again to break the mold in terms of naming the ride. So we looked at what is it that would communicate the various aspects of the ride to the people we're targeting it at, the 10 to 15-year-olds. And the X:// is an adaptation of the computer DOS symbol, and No Way Out, well, once you're in here, there is no way out.
It went through a few changes over the years, but all these years later, it still exists today. It doesn't go backwards, and it's been rethemed to Walking Dead, the ride. With an excellent pre-show and some real surprises.
Welcome to the Thorpe Park Safe Zone. You know that you've been on the road for a while. But before you can enter the safe zone, you need to answer 3 questions. You at the back. How many walkers have you killed?
Too many to count. Oh, a lot.
How many people have you killed?
2.
Why?
Tillet, walkers have reached the safe zone. Walls over.
We've got to release the whole thing. We need to move the Thorpe Park now.
This is a Thorpe Park Safe Zone emergency announcement.
Ride to survive, or walk with the dead. The Walking Dead, the ride at Thorpe Park Resort. Pay for a day, come back free for a year.
In 1998, the Tussauds Group purchased Thorpe Park from the Ready Mix Concrete Group. Tussauds had owned the Alton Towers Resort since the early 90s, and after selling their stake in Portaventura, they took ownership of Thorpe Park. Initially, there were only some minor changes to the park, with some of the smaller and older attractions removed. Then, the Tussauds Group began to invest, most notably a big re-theme of the cinema into a 4D pirate-themed attraction.
And this be my story. My pirating days began as a cabin boy for Captain Lucky and his bloody band of pirates. But far too greedy was Captain Lucky, and he betrayed us all. Only I escaped his dastardly deed, finding myself stranded and alone. But I had a plan. I mapped out the island, setting booby traps everywhere. Then, when Lucky returned, I could avenge my mates, escape the island, and sail the salty seas with pirates!
At the start of the new millennium, the epic tidal wave opened, and the Amity theme really began to take hold. Amity Cove was born, as was the beach, Neptune's Kingdom. Tidal wave, by the way, was at the time Europe's tallest water ride. However, in that same year, the summer of 2000, disaster struck at Thorpe Park when a fire broke out. Two attractions, Mr. Rabbit's Tropical Travels and Wicked Witch's Haunt, were both damaged beyond repair. Over 7,000 guests and employees were safely evacuated from the park as over 100 firefighters acted heroically to quickly stop the fire spreading any further. What could have been the end of Thorpe Park was in truth only the beginning. Later that same season, Enterprise was installed, the same Huss model that resides at Alton Towers. The older brother was always watching on with interest. Eventually, it was renamed to Zodiac and placed near Vortex, which opened in 2001 in a new Lost City area of the park. I find it incredible that Detonator was only opened in 2001. It's arguably one of the most reliable rides in the park, and it has an incredible force versus its relatively small height for a modern drop tower. Also in 2001, Mr. Rabbit's Tropical Travels, which had somehow continued to operate with a limp after the notorious fire, was eventually destroyed to help make way for a brand new roller coaster. Around this time, two roller coaster designers, Werner Stengel and John Wardley, were very much at the top of their game. Working with manufacturer Intamin, they brought the world's first 10-time inverting roller coaster to Thorpe Park.
Now my worst ride at Thorpe Park, well, unfortunately it's got to be Colossus. Them restraints are just no good for the larger framed man. Oh yeah, it's got to be Colossus, unfortunately.
Yeah, the first ever ride here was Colossus. Didn't enjoy it. But to be fair, like, I still don't.
I think the worst ride at Thorpe Park has got to be Colossus. The cars and the restraints are so tight and you have to do some sort of contortion to even get on the thing. When you eventually get on it, the ride is so unpleasant, it is so rough and rickety. And when you eventually get off it, you need a paracetamol. It's not a good ride at all.
And so, Colossus opened in 2002, and whatever you might think of it, it boosted visitor numbers. For once, John Wardley ushered his colleagues away from one of his favourite manufacturers, Bollinger and Mavillard, instead deciding to work with Intamin to enhance an already existing 8-looping ride with 2 more Heartline rolls, thus coming up with the world's first 10-looping roller coaster. That is quite a marketing hook, no matter where you come from.
The world's first 10-looping roller coaster
Colossus, it never leaves you. Thorpe Park.
One thing that's been really useful in coaster design is computers. Before computers were invented, they literally built hills and dips just at random, and somebody would take a chance and sit on the cart and go for it. They may never come back. Not saying they died, but it never made it around the track, or it fell off the track and so on. So they just make some modifications and try again and try again. They would keep on trying until they had the ride sorted. Now, of course, you can enter all the details into the computer as to what type of ride you're trying to create, and the computer will simulate, work out, will it actually make it around the tracks? Will the G-force be too high? Will it go too fast? And then it can keep tweaking the design on the computer before they spend £10 million bending the steel or the wood to create that ride.
First of all, we think of who it is we're trying to entertain, what we're trying to achieve, what sort of emotions, whether it is going to be a family ride for everybody, or whether it's going to be a fairly hard, intimidating, teenage white knuckle ride.
Some people will look at a roller coaster that goes upside down 10 times and say, no way am I going on that. And they'll look at a wooden roller coaster which just has a lot of dips and twists and turns, and they'll think, that looks like fun, I'll go on that.
Once we've decided on what we want and where we're going to put it, then that's when we start to dream up ideas and imagine how we can do things in an innovative way. Once I've got an idea in my mind, I'll start to lay it out on the site using the computer and the site survey, producing it in 3 dimensions, in plan, in profile, and what it's going to look like, what it's going to sound like, how it's going to be decorated and so on. And then gradually the whole project matures from there. From past experience, I know more or less what will work, how much energy will be consumed in the train in order to get around a certain configuration, and have a pretty good idea that what we are conceiving is not a crazy pipe dream. And then a number of suppliers will be shortlisted who will then be given the task of doing a design feasibility study, and they will then run the dynamics through their computers. So they will take our layout and profile and they will then check that it will work. They will be making modifications and we will be accommodating those modifications on site, making sure that we miss crucial trees and features and so on, and backwards and forwards over a period of weeks or months, whilst their engineers are doing the sums and number crunching to make sure that the ride will physically work. We're tying this in with the very complicated planning process in order to get planning consent for the ride, and eventually we come up with the perfect design, which then in fact makes everybody happy and will make our guests happy.
And your worst ride?
The worst ride here is probably Colossus.
Not so.
Colossus.
The park changed the game even further that same year with the launch of Thorpe Park Fright Nights.
Ride in the dark, brave the mazes. Fright Nights at Thorpe Park. The island changes after dark.
Next question, first memory of Thorpe Park Fright Nights.
Oh man, very similar to my first experience of Thorpe Park. I used to be terrified of mazes. I remember literally standing outside of Asylum watching people sprinting out. Took me a few years of going to Fright Nights to eventually go into a maze. My first maze was Studio 13, which I was terrified in, but I did enjoy it, and yeah, same with the rides. I just eventually started going in more and more.
Thorpe Park Fright Nights has become one of the most successful horror events in the UK, with the park making the majority of its yearly revenue around this exciting time of year. Halloween in the United Kingdom has become big business, and a visit to Thorpe Park's Fright Nights is a must-do if you're a horror fan of any description. Immersive horror mazes and escape rooms, roaming actors and nighttime rides on some of the best roller coasters in the country.
in your arms, too late to beg you or cancel it, though I know it must be the killing time, unwillingly mine. Fate up against your will, through the thick and thin, he will wait until you give yourself to him. In the starlit nights I saw you, so cruelly you kissed me. Your lips a magic world, your sky all hung with jewels. The killing moon will come too soon. Fate up against your will, through the thick and thin, he will wait until you give yourself to him.
When it first opened in 2002, it had two major attractions: Freak Show 3D and a horror maze called The Freezer, which to this day horror enthusiasts still rave about.
It's cold in there.
So cool, it's scary. The freezer, this fall.
Every year, the island, like no other, undergoes some pretty dark changes. Fright Nights has become the park's biggest event of the year, with guests flooding the island for night rides on iconic attractions such as Stealth, Saw the Ride and Swarm. But it's also a chance to run through what sometimes become legendary scare mazes, which have got bigger and bigger every year.
My name's Desiree. Welcome to our safe haven. It's so nice to see you. You come on and follow me. We're gonna get you all settled in.
If I can't see her, she can't see me. Get her out!
Living on fat pockets on full with the cat rolling around the 9-deuce Cadillac. Still got my homies to watch my back and to smoke your ass if you wanna come and chat. That's my stuff. And the kids will be and follow.
first ever Fright Nights ran for just 4 nights and featured 2 mazes. There was also a scare zone between the 2 mazes, and of course it was a chance to experience the rides at night. As the event got bigger and bigger, other content was added, including film screenings and even a freak show called Carnival of the Bizarre. In 2005, the freezer was changed and renamed the Asylum, but Freak Show 3D became a whole new maze called Hellgate. By this point, Fright Nights was running for 11 nights of the year. In 2006, the Scare Maze 7 was added, and the park had fully embraced this idea of night rides, scares and fear. It got bigger and bigger, and more elaborate mazes were created, sometimes based around mouth-watering intellectual properties and brands. 2010 was a landmark year all round for Thorpe Park. The maze Saw Alive was added to the park. Until quite recently, it was still open for Fright Nights. Other mazes from the past included the much-loved Cabin in the Woods, My Bloody Valentine, The Curse, Dead End, and Experiment 10. Not forgetting The Passing, Studio 13, and of course Blair Witch. Fright Nights now runs for over 23 nights of the year. In 2018, I caught up with Nick Hutson, who had been tasked with creating some new music for the event. What are your first ever memories of Thorpe Park Fright Nights?
There were 2 ways I can answer this. My first being a time when I didn't like scare mazes, and I remember standing at the top of Depth Charge and looking over, and I met this fanboy, and he said, oh, they're doing this maze, they're doing that maze, and I said, oh, never for me, I'm never going to do it. My first proper memory was with my friend Lee, and he dragged me to Thorpe Park Fright Nights the year the Lionsgate stuff appeared, which was 2013, I believe. And I just fell in love with it. It was the first scare mazes I ever did. Cabin in the Woods was amazing, Blair Witch Project, My Bloody Valentine, and Saw. They were all, really, really fun mazes. I just remember the joy and laughter that came out of doing mazes with a really good group of friends. So it's nice that 5 years on, I'm part of the creative team, which is fabulous.
What was your favourite maze over the years?
I remember coming out of Cabin in the Woods and turning to Michael Bolton, I think it was, and just saying, is it me or is this maze actually genius? And he said, it's genius, it's done stuff that's never been done before. For those of you that don't know, it was the first free-flow maze that you could go any direction you want. It had a hidden room in the middle, like those of you who've seen Cabin in the Woods, we know it has the control room, so you can go in there and press buttons, and it triggered things that happened in other parts of the mazes. You didn't have to have the hands on the shoulders of the person in front of you, so it felt a lot more open and a lot more intense. And the same with My Bloody Valentine, it was a free-flow maze, and now everyone does them, so bravo to Thorpe for that.
And tell us about your involvement in 2018 Fright Nights. You've been working on something for quite a while.
Yes, well, I have been responsible for all the new audio that is going in to Fright Nights this year. We've got an emissions track, we've got a bridge track, we've got a Lost City track, we have a jungle track, we've got the all new maze audio for the 3 new mazes, so Blair Witch Project, Dead Creek Woods and Vulcan Peak. We've got a new WWTP, which is very, very exciting. That was the most fun I've ever had, and we put lots of theme park celebrities in. For example, Mike Collins from Coaster Radio is hosting WWTP. He is Big Bob. We've got Tim and Jen Tracker. They make a cameo. Robert Coker and Doug Barnes from the Season Pass podcast. They're all in there, so it's a kind of who's who of the American world of theme park vocal celebrities. We've put some old classics from WWTP, and we put some new ones. It gets a bit dark at certain points, which is quite amusing. It's just a really, really great project to be involved with.
WWTP Cape Radio News.
You poor souls in the Marlin Bay County area will definitely now be aware that fear has indeed taken over. There is no hope nor escape from the cove, and survival seems futile. Townspeople are fleeing for their lives in the hope that their souls won't be entirely decimated. That said, the sun is shining, and you're listening to the Big Bob Jones All-Day Radio Show.
Splish splash, I was taking a bath, long about a Saturday night. Yeah, jumped up, just relaxing in the tub, thinking everything was alright. Well, I took my troubles down to Mataroo. You know the gypsy with the gold cap too. She's got a pad down on 30th.
It's truly amazing how far Fright Nights has come since those early years. Now, roller coasters like Nemesis Inferno are part of the lineup, and it gives the chance for people to ride the roller coasters in the dark. Back in the mid to late 90s, the Tussauds Group had already had huge success by working with Bollinger and Mabillard, the manufacturer that had helped to bring the original Nemesis to Alton Towers. Nemesis Inferno opened in 2003, set around a volcano, and it helped to spawn a whole new themed area of the park, known as Calypso Bay. Many roller coaster enthusiasts argue to this day about which is better, Nemesis at Alton Towers or Nemesis Inferno at Thorpe Park. Whatever you think of these incredible rides, both pack an incredible punch and are often as much fun to watch as they are to ride. A great man once told me that that's the key thing to any roller coaster. As Thunder River was becoming the Rumba Rapids, initially by the way sponsored by Ribena, a big wheel was added to Lost City called Eclipse, and Quantum opened in the same year. Some variety was really coming to the lineup at Thorpe Park. Calgary Stampede was eventually sacrificed and was sold as a travelling ride. In its place came Samurai straight from Chessington World of Adventures. It's a ride I absolutely love, and its location in the park between two roller coasters is truly awesome. Eclipse was eventually relocated to Chessington on the same site that Samurai used to operate on, and the teacup rides continued to be rebranded on a regular basis. By 2004, it had become Storm in a Teacup. In 2005, more new rides came to the park with the addition of Rush and the infamous Slammer. Slammer was the last ride of its kind to be produced and has sadly now ceased operation. 2006 brought one of the UK's best rides, and one I still believe we are very lucky to have. It's called Stealth. It's the second tallest roller coaster in the UK at 205 feet, and it takes you from 0 to 80 miles an hour. This roller coaster was perhaps a seminal moment for the park.
My favourite ride at Thorpe Park has to be the amazing Stealth, because it's fast, it's intense, and it's very, very tall.
In terms of the big coasters, I've always been a big fan of Swarm and Stealth. They're my two main ones, I'd say.
Favourite ride here has got to be Stealth.
That 0 to 80 mile an hour launch in 2.3 seconds. There's nothing like that on any other UK roller coaster. Sitting on the front row, wind in your face, loose restraint. It's a perfect ride. And that air slam hill at the end.
It was one of the world's first hydraulically launched roller coasters. Manufacturer Intamin pioneered this technology in the early noughties, the first being Accelerator at Knott's Berry Farm. The continuing success of Fright Nights, coupled with the recent coaster additions at the park, meant Thorpe Park was really starting to become that angry teenage little brother, the rebel of the Two Swords group. In 2006, the Thorpe Farm closed its doors for the last time. This meant the Canada Creek Railway was becoming a shadow of its former self, and it was the beginning of its eventual demise. In 2006, not only was the Flying Fish preparing to close and be moved, but Model World and the Water Bus Tour also ceased operation. Of all the attractions been and gone, these had survived all the way up until now. In 2007, the Flying Fish returned in a new location, and the Merlin Entertainment Group acquired Thorpe Park from Two Swords. Another new era was about to begin.
And the ones who had loved her the most.
Pirates 3D closed and was replaced with a film called Time Voyages from Gardaland. Today, the cinema is predominantly used for Angry Birds 4D. Opening in 2009 was Saw the Ride, a Gerstlauer and Merlin's first major roller coaster at the park. For a while, it was the steepest roller coaster in the UK and the first ever horror film themed roller coaster. To this day, it's one of the most popular rides at the park. When it opened, live actors would stalk around the queue line, something the park brought back for its 40th anniversary. Construction of saw the end of the Canada Creek Railway. The success of Saw the Ride led to a horror scare maze, Saw Alive becoming a regular attraction from 2010 onwards and a key staple of Fright Nights.
Move! In there now! Line up against the wall, backs against the wall, do as I say, get in there, move! Let me get a good look at all of you. You've made a mistake going here, and now you're gonna pay.
That same year, the Octopus Gardens were removed as the Merlin influence continued. Storm Surge was opened a ride that had come from Cypress Gardens in Florida, a park that Merlin eventually turned into Legoland. One thing I've learned on this journey across the island like no other is as long as the teacup ride is changing names or sponsorship, something cool is about to happen. And as Tetley Tea took over the sponsorship of the ride, a new roller coaster was in the planning. 2012 saw the opening of the Swarm, one of the first ever wing coasters and an instant classic. It's immediately become one of the most loved roller coasters in the UK. In its second season of operation, the back rows were turned around, making it the world's first backwards wing coaster. In January 2011, the Thorpe Park Resort in the United Kingdom submitted plans for the UK's first winged roller coaster. Months after this initial planning phase, Thorpe Park began to take theme park ride marketing to a whole new level, showing Nous way ahead of their time, with social media advertising and videos that went viral that began to capture the imagination of the public.
Ali, push her in. Ali, push her in. No, the post's got to go. Right, Ali. Same time, same time. Give me a sec, give me a sec. Go. Where is she? Where's she?
Dramatic and disturbing events as scenes of apocalyptic devastation are taking over the entire country, with explosions, fireballs and a crashed plane.
Thorpe Park were, and still are, market leaders in the way they promote their brand and their pretty awesome park. The new ride was to be constructed by Bollinger and Mabillard, who had previously worked on Air, Nemesis and Oblivion at Alton Towers. Standing 127 feet tall, the ride features 4 inversions, and riders can expect speeds of up to 57 miles an hour. At the end of 2011, Thorpe Park put on a firework display, at which a fire truck was blown up. The fire truck was to take a part of the central theming of the Swarm. Often, Thorpe is a park that feels like Alton Towers' angry teenage little brother, and the Swarm was a perfect fit. It was to stand alone when it opened in 2012, and it immediately became one of the best themed roller coasters in the country. The park even released images of test dummies that were missing limbs after ride designers apparently had set the bar too high. The ride was, of course, given the all clear before opening. sitting on Swarm Island, featuring an incredible inverted first drop and plenty of near-miss elements. It's a brilliant ride. It remains one of my personal all-time favourites. What keeps bringing you back to Thorpe Park?
It's just like my second home at this point. Like, I love it so much here. I've met some of my very best friends through this park, and every year they're bringing something new, so it's always fresh. And yeah, now that we're going into Fright Night season, it's my favourite time of year, so this is a big draw to me.
It's the atmosphere at Thorpe. It's got a really nice atmosphere here, and the rides are good. And yeah, we tend to have a really good time. I mean, even Peter really likes coming to Thorpe, even though there's not a lot that he can really ride. It's just the atmosphere of the place.
In 2013, the park experimented with offering cheap accommodation to its guests, with the addition of the crash pad. Nowadays, the Thorpe Shark Hotel offers rooms at very reasonable prices, giving you a chance to stay on the island like no other. Always quite self-aware, Thorpe Park seemed to know its attitude needed to recognise the family market. Angry Birds Land opening in 2014 really helped to achieve this. Yes, Thorpe Park is a thrill-seeker's paradise. With its glorious beaches and family attractions, it can cater for a perfect family day out. The Dodgems and the rejuvenation of the theatre has breathed new life into this area of the park. 2015 saw the addition of a jungle maze based around the hit show I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. A year later, a huge investment saw the opening of Derren Brown's Ghost Train. The park had worked closely with The Mentalist to create a fairly unique theme park attraction.
Over the last 3 years, I have been working to completely reinvent the concept of the Ghost Train. People can expect a heart-stopping experience that includes grand illusion, live action and special effects that will completely rewrite the rules of what theme parks can do. This experience will take you on a 13-minute journey through fear. My team is set to deliver a revolutionary experience, and guests will be left wondering where perception ends and reality begins.
Behind me in this Victorian warehouse is a 20-metre Victorian train carriage hung above the ground with iron chains. This is a world first, a fully immersive, mind-blowing experience for every passenger.
Over 1,000 specialists have come together to create this experience, and I believe this represents the future for theme parks across the world.
This was followed by more family rides such as Timber Tugboat and Lumber Jump. Recently, Thorpe Park have shown incredible innovation with events and temporary attractions such as Zombie Hunt, Game FX, Love Island Lates and numerous bespoke attractions that bring record crowds to the island like no other. The park have also been part of numerous commercial TV opportunities, most recently featuring in BBC shows such as The Apprentice and children's TV show Operation Ouch. These days at the Thorpe Park Resort, the back rows on the Swarm face forward. The flying fish still flies, but the slammer no longer slams. Loggers has leapt for the last time, and Canada Creek is now Old Town. I'm a Celebrity became Jungle Escape, and by the time you watch this, a bunch of other stuff will have happened. There's probably loads I got wrong, and some stuff that I missed out. But I have no doubt the tale of Thorpe Park is probably only truly just beginning. I can't wait to see what they do next. If you've made it this far, thank you for watching, and please don't forget to subscribe.